The accountability and evaluation process of the Simi Valley Unified School District uses the California Standards for the Teaching Profession and the Continuum of Teaching Practice to support the ongoing development of all certificated personnel. Each year, teachers will use the continuum to evaluate themselves as to their developmental level of performance relative to the standards. The Continuum of Teaching Practice is aligned with the California Standards for the Teaching Profession. Both the standards and the continuum have been updated to reflect the changes in the context for teaching and learning to effectively address the current needs of our diverse student population. As teachers complete the accountability and evaluation process, please make sure the current versions of the continuum and CSTPs are being utilized. Teachers will be using the continuum to conduct a self-assessment of their teaching practice. It is a tool to guide teachers to reflect on student learning and instructional practices, formulate goals to improve teaching practices and enhance student performance, guide, monitor, and assess the progress of a teacher's practice toward professional goals and professionally accepted benchmarks over time. All teachers at the beginning of each school year will conduct a self-assessment to determine an area of their teaching practice to focus on for the year. The continuum provides the framework to identify the level of current performance, as well as specifically describe the actions required to improve within each standard. The California Standards for the Teaching Profession are organized into 6 domains. Within each standard, elements identify key areas required to successfully address the standard. In order to successfully complete the self-assessment, teachers will need to be familiar with both the standards and the elements within each standard. For each element within the 6 CSTP standards, the continuum describes 5 levels of development. Each level, beginning with emerging, level 1, and moving across to innovating, level 5, describes what a teacher should know and be able to implement within their teaching practice. The levels do not represent a chronological sequence in a teacher's growth. Each column describes developmental levels of performance at the time of the self-assessment. A change in the context for teaching could possibly create a shift in the teacher's performance levels as they adjust to new curriculum or a new student population. To make this process an effective means of determining a focus area for teachers' professional growth, it is critical for teachers to reflect honestly on their current levels. Therefore, the self-assessment on the continuum does not need to be shared with the administrator. The process of self-assessing on the continuum of teaching practice begins by looking at each CSTP standard. Using the placemat found on page 13 of the continuum booklet, teachers should read through each of the standards and the elements listed within each standard. While reading through the descriptors of each standard and element, teachers should reflect on their current teaching and identify evidence of practice aligned with each standard. As teachers reflect, they should begin to identify a standard that they will focus on developing during the school year. Using this placemat and post-it notes, teachers can do a quick overall self-assessment to determine the CSTP that they will use to conduct a more concentrated self-assessment. As teachers read through the standards and elements, they should write the appropriate symbol of their current level of performance for that area of their teaching practice on the sticky note as shown. A plus sign would be used for a standard that the teacher feels is a strength. A check mark is an area that the teacher feels is a standard of acceptable performance. A delta, the mathematical symbol for change, will be used to note a standard that the teacher feels is an area that they would like to further develop. Once this process is complete, the teachers can further self-assess on the CSTP standard that they identified as an area of need noted with the delta symbol. Teachers may have multiple standards that they feel they need to address. They should choose 1 or 2 from this process to look at more closely. Once teachers have identified the CSTP standard that they would like to focus on, they will go through each element of the standard within the continuum, looking at the descriptors and determining their current level of performance. It is critical to begin on the left of the continuum because any practice described at the emerging level 1 is carried across the continuum to the right, even if not explicitly stated. Teachers should highlight the descriptors that best match current practice and note evidence of these levels in the space provided. Teachers may find that their current practice identifies descriptors from different levels within each element. It is important to note that in order to achieve that current level of performance, all descriptors within that level should be highlighted. Once the teacher has identified their current level of performance within that element, they should date the self-assessment. Subsequent self-assessments can be documented using a different color highlighter to show growth over time. Teachers should replicate this process for each element within the CSTP standard they identified as an area of need, as noted earlier using the delta symbol. Once this portion of the self-assessment process is complete, the teacher should have ample evidence to help choose which element will be the focus of the professional learning plan for the year. Information regarding the professional learning plan will be provided in a subsequent training presentation.